Welcome to Rise Within Channel. I'm glad you're here. What you're about to hear is not just content, it's a conversation and life lesson. One that I hope meets you exactly where you are and leaves you somewhere better. Let's begin. Episode 14, You Aren't Drained, You're Faking. Have you ever come home after a long day, not physically tired, but deeply, inexplicably drained and not been able to explain why? You did nothing particularly hard. You went through the motions. You showed up, said the right things, wore the right expression, played the right role. And yet you are exhausted in a way that sleep barely touches. That is not work fatigue. That is the cost of performance. The energy required to sustain a version of yourself that is not quite true day after day, conversation after conversation, room after room. Today we are going to name it. And then we are going to talk about what it costs and what it would feel like to finally put it down. Part 1, the mask we wear. The psychologist Carl Jung called it the persona, the mask we construct and present to the world. Every human being has one. It is not inherently pathological. We adjust our presentation in different contexts. We are different at work than at home, different with strangers than with close friends. That flexibility is social intelligence, not inauthenticity. The problem arises when the persona becomes the primary self, when the mask is worn so consistently, for so long, that the person wearing it begins to forget what their actual face looks like. The actor Jim Carrey once spoke about this with profound vulnerability. After decades of playing the high-energy, perfectly happy character the world expected him to be, he faced a massive battle with severe depression. He later realized that we should look at the word depressed as deep rest. He said your body needs depression because it needs deep rest from the avatar, the character you've been trying to play for the world. When the confident professional is secretly terrified, when the supportive friend is drowning internally, when the happy family member is quietly falling apart, when the put-together adult is performing competence so convincingly that they have lost access to the part of themselves that genuinely needs help. This is not weakness. This is the predictable result of a culture that rewards presentation over truth, that applauds the performance while creating no safe space for the reality underneath. Part 2, the specific cost. Pretending is expensive. Psychologists have a term for what it costs: ego depletion. The research shows that self-regulation, the act of controlling, suppressing, or monitoring your own behavior, draws from a finite cognitive and emotional resource. The more you use it, the less you have for everything else. When you spend significant energy managing your image, controlling what you say, suppressing what you feel, performing a self you have constructed for others, you are depleting the very resources you need for creativity, genuine connection, and growth. But the deepest cost isn't just mental fatigue. It is a tragedy of wasted time. A palliative care nurse named Bronnie Ware spent years counseling people in the final weeks of their lives, recording their most common reflections. The number one regret of the dying was heartbreakingly simple. I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. This is why people who are living inauthentically often feel simultaneously exhausted and stuck, not because they are lazy or unmotivated, but because the energy that should be going toward building their actual life is being consumed by maintaining a fiction. You cannot build a real future on a fake foundation. Part 3. The relief of truth here is what nobody tells you about authenticity. It is not just a virtue. It is a physical relief. There is a specific kind of lightness that comes when you stop pretending, when you say the true thing instead of the safe thing, when you let someone see the real difficulty instead of the managed presentation, when you admit to yourself honestly what you actually feel, want, and need. It feels for a moment like risk, like exposure, like standing in a cold wind without a coat. And then, when the world does not collapse, when the people who matter lean in rather than pull back, it feels like freedom. Brené Brown's decades of research on vulnerability led her to one central, counterintuitive finding. The people who lived with the greatest sense of wholeness and connection were not the people who had the most perfect presentation. They were the people who were willing to be seen imperfectly, honestly, without the armor of performance. Vulnerability is not weakness. It is the most accurate measure of courage. It is the willingness to show up and be seen even when you cannot control the outcome. Part 4. Beginning to take it off, you do not have to remove the mask all at once. In fact, trying to do so can be destabilizing and counterproductive. The practice is gentler than that. It begins with one true thing. It starts when you offer an honest answer where you would usually deflect. It happens when you choose an admission of difficulty where you would usually perform competence. It is found in that one conversation where you let the real version of you show up just to see what happens. Most of the time, what happens is not rejection. What happens is recognition. The other person, given permission by your honesty, relaxes into their own truth, and the conversation, for perhaps the first time in a long time, becomes real. Closing the person you are pretending to be is taking up space that belongs to someone far more interesting. Someone with real fears and real desires and a real story that has not been sanitized for public consumption. That person, the unedited, unperforming, genuinely alive version of you, is not too much for the world. They are exactly what the world needs more of. Put the performance down, not all at once, but piece by piece, and discover what it feels like to move through your own life with the freedom of someone who has nothing left to hide. Closing quote before you go, carry this with you today. Authenticity is the daily practice of letting go of who we think we're supposed to be and embracing who we are. Until next time, keep rising. How does the pacing of these new stories feel to you when you read it aloud?
Please subscribe to my channel and leave a comment.